I always like to come back and see you. You know, I was thinking coming today about the movie Places in the Heart, and how that at the conclusion of it, if you remember it, it's a sweet movie, and they were passing the Lord's Supper, and there were people there that had died, and not really, but in the movie, and I thought it was a sweet thing, and that we've done this morning with our brothers and sisters to pass the bread and the fruit of the vine that bind us together in Christian love and fellowship. And I always look out over this audience, and I still see those people sitting out there, and what they meant to the church, and they sat by you, and they were yours, and I think it just tells us and teaches us that we're moving on and that we need to make our calling and election sure. I wanted to talk to you a little bit today, and let me remind you that when I leave, after I preach, I've got to go up on the mountain, and we couldn't find anybody to fill in for me, so I'll be going up there too. But there was a great, and you may have heard the story, but I want to use it to illustrate the lesson this morning. A great violinist, Chrysler was his name, and he played before kings and queens and all over Europe, and there wasn't anybody better. And he was on a train, and he was going to another place, and the train broke down, and he went into a little store, a little shop, and he took his great violin and he put it on the table, and the man there saw it, and he said, "He's stolen it. He wouldn't be here in a place like this." So they called the police, and the police came and talked to the man. He said, "Yeah, this is who I am. Here's my identification. I went to the University of Vienna. I've got calluses on my fingers." And they said anybody could do that. And finally somebody said, "You know, I've heard him play." And he said, "Play for us." And reluctantly he took the violin out with the bow, put it under his chin, and he started to play. And tears flowed down some of their cheeks. They were mesmerized at his ability. And they said, "Yeah, he's the one, all right." And I want to ask you today, can you play it? Can you play it? Can you live it? Can you, with your life, in whatever role you play and whatever you making a difference, can you bring joy and hope and peace in a family, in a marriage, in a church, in a nation? And I think today when we look around, we've got a lot of people that can carry one around, but can you make music with it? I think this is one of the gaps today that we need to fill, and it doesn't mean to say that any of us can do it perfectly. But I want to tell you this morning. You wear a powerful name, Christian, coming from Jesus Christ, and people expect things from that because of who you are and who you claim to be. And sometimes there is a huge discrepancy in our world and the difference in people that maybe can carry one, but can't make music with it. You know, I like the story that usually comes around at Christmas, It's a Wonderful Life. And it too has a powerful message in it that what difference have you made by being here? As a child, as a maid in a marriage, as a father, as a mother in the world. We are so desperately in need of people today who can live it and who can play it and who can show it. And that's what he was doing, and that's what he was about. And I feel like today when we think about it, Jesus is teaching us. There was a sweet sister in this church years and years ago. She had a hard life, and every time I go to see her, she was upset and complaining, and why didn't you come yesterday? And she would tell me, I have been a member of my Lord's church for 75 years. And I wanted to say, I'm glad you told me. Because I don't think the heart and the spirit was really there, that people could see it and could feel it and could understand it. And I think that's what this is about. And I know a lot of times now we give baptismal certificates to people who've been baptized. That's good. But I want to tell you, on the judgment day, I don't think you're going to be asked how many times you read the Bible through, as she told me, how much you've memorized. But I think it's going to come down to the spirit and the attitude of your heart and how you've developed and what you've done and the music, as it were, that you've made with your life and the difference in whatever stage you were on and playing at that particular time. And I think it's so much a part of what Jesus was teaching. I remember in the book of Matthew, the 20th chapter, that he talked about the laborers in the vineyard. You remember? And how he went out at 6 o'clock and at 9 o'clock and at noon and then at 5 o'clock. And he hired those, and they agreed with him so much. But at late in the afternoon, when he went out, he said, "Why stand ye here all day idle?" And they said, "Because nobody hired us." He said, "Go work in my vineyard." And they went out and worked in the vineyard just that 1 hour, and they got the same pay. But here's the point that Jesus was teaching. At the close of the day, he paid them, and they said, "We've borne the heat of the noonday sun. We've been doing this and that." And I think here's the point. They should have said, when a lot of people say, "Yeah, I got to do what I wanted to do, and I had my fun, and when I was old, I became a Christian." Let me tell you what you missed by not going in early. I haven't been perfect in all I should be in many places, but we ought to be so thankful and to say to the people that worked 1 hour, "You don't know what you missed." I needed Jesus as a young person when I was choosing my friends. I needed Jesus when I was choosing my habits. I needed Jesus when I was choosing my wife, who's been with me for 63 years. Then one day we looked around and we had a lot of children. Lord, what am I supposed to do and what am I supposed to be? And he helped me through that. I'm not a perfect father, but I don't know where I'd be without him. And the point we should make, I enjoyed those years of being a Christian as a young man, as a middle-aged man, and now as an old man. And he's been there for me. I baptized people in my ministry, so many I remember well, baptizing a man, and we went back to dress, and he took off an arm and a part of a leg. And he said, "I guess you wonder what happened." You know, I tried not to notice particularly. He said, "I got drunk and decided I'd stop a train." And he said, "How I'm alive, I don't know." He missed those days with Jesus. And I've baptized many that their lives are so messed up. Oh, he can forgive us, thank God for that. But what you've missed, what you missed. And he was trying to tell us that by coming in early and being there, though we weren't perfect, he's blessed us in so many ways. I think about the old elder brother. Had dirt under his fingernails. He worked on the farm. He did all the right things, and the prodigal comes home, and he's wasted his substance in riotous living, and he said, "What's that noise?" They were singing and making merry. "You never gave me a kid." Son, you've been here all this time with me. Look what he's missed. I think that's what Jesus is telling us this morning as you sit there and as I stand here. What kind of disposition and attitude? What's your heart like? Not just the outside and the things that people see, around about us. But how have you developed? The old Pharisees, you remember Jesus talked about how they would tithe and do all the things they would do, but he talked about them being full of, like a grave with bones in them. And I think one of the powerful lessons that we see in this is what Jesus is telling us, that if you come in early, a lot of people didn't know when they came in late because they didn't know better. Go from here. Go from here. I had a call the other day, and a man came. He said, I've been up all night. One of the men that came in kind of off of the street up on the mountain, and he said, I want you to baptize me. He was in his 60s. And I never saw anybody so happy as when he came up out of that water. And I wanted to say, oh, you've missed, but thank God you're here now. And I think that's what Jesus is telling us here in this particular lesson. And you know, the same principle is true with Jesus Christ and the great violinist. He came into the world, the Prince of Peace, the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords and the Son of God. What in the world are you doing in a barn? How is it that they put you and laid you in a crib where the cows eat? How are you wrapped in these cheap clothes? I brought a lesson a few Sundays ago about the wise men and how they followed the star and how they dropped what they were doing and put it aside to follow the star. And I've often thought, when that star stopped, hey, you made a mistake. This is no palace. This is no king. We've got to stop where he stopped. And they couldn't understand it, and they didn't get who he was and the message of love and peace that he brought and that he taught. And the whole Jewish nation stumbled over it. And they've been in a bad way ever since. I think the same thing about the church. Where's your cathedral? Where are your great choirs? Where are your orchestras? Upon this rock I will build my church. It was very simple. When he wanted to organize it, he took men out of the church and said, you be a leader, an elder, and a deacon. And when he started the church, he started it with men who were ignorant and unlearned, as the Bible said. He never wanted us to be entertained. He wanted the worship to be from your heart. I remember one of the elders said, you know, sometimes my grandchildren sing to me, and he said, they're not too good, but it's beautiful to me. We've missed it. They missed it in that day. You're not in the right clothes. You don't teach what we want to hear. And it's still true, and it's still happening. I want to tell you, as we bring it to a close, some of those who played it. Did you ever look at the book of Hebrews, the 11th chapter? Got all the heroes in it. These people could play. They could play it. I think about, as you open it up, you've got Enoch who walked with God. Let me tell you something this morning that you already know as you sit here. It's getting harder and harder to walk in that way in a wicked world, with all the things that we see and all the pollution that comes into our hearts and minds. You know it, and we've got to fight it. We've got to hold on. But he walked with God, and God took him home with him. We look at Joseph. I love Joseph, who, when he could have been bitter, he said, as his brothers stood there who had done him terribly, and he said, you meant it for evil, but God meant it for good. And I think of Moses, who gave up the riches of Egypt to suffer affliction with the people of God for a season. And Abraham, the Bible said, who looked for a city which hath foundation, whose builder and maker is God. I think about the Ruths in the Bible that could play it. When Naomi said, "You go on home. Don't waste your life here with me. I'm old." She said, "Don't ask me to leave you. I'll be here, and I'll take care of you, and I'll look after you." They could play it. And I think when we move to the New Testament and we see Peter, and he was weak and he made mistakes. But on the day of Pentecost, when they stood there and the church was being established, and they said, "These men are drunk." Listen to this one that cowed in front of a little girl. The Bible says, and Peter stood up and he said, "We are not drunk as ye suppose, seeing it is but the third hour of the day. But this is that which was spoken by the prophets." Paul could play it. Beat up, beaten, in prison. And about midnight they were singing. The point of the lesson this morning, for me, I need it too. And you need it. We all need it. It's time for us to decide whether we're just going to wear the name or whether we're going to really live it. And whether we're going to play it, as it were, and whether we're going to bring joy, and whether we're going to bring peace and hope, and even truth to a world that's going in the wrong direction. And we need you. And God needs us all. No, he's a phony. I don't pay any attention to all these signs. But mister, when you play it, it's what children want to know from their parents. It's what the world wants to know from the church. Not do you attend, not do you read the Bible, but can you live it? I'm going to do everything that I can do as I close out my life to try to play it wherever I am, whether it's standing in a pulpit or in my life or with my family. We need desperately some people today who can live this and who can stand up. I don't understand the atheist. If I were an atheist and loved this country, my message would be, you leave these Christians alone. They're the greatest assets we've got. They're not filling the prisons. They're not destroying the home. They're our hope. And I hope this morning, as I extend the invitation, that we'll all look back into our lives, starting with me right through this, and say, am I just pretending? Or can I really make music? And can I do it in a hard place like this man did in that little shop? I can make it here. I can make it anywhere. If you strayed away, come back. You're needed. You're a husband or a wife or a child. You can do it. And we can make this world a better place because we've lived. And if you're not a Christian, I want to tell you what you've missed, and I already have. But come now. Confess him before men. That changes our allegiance. Believe, that changes our heart. Repentance changes our will. And baptism changes our status, our state. While we stand and sing.
Rock of ages, cleft for me.